welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name is Clint Button and I'm a granite sculptor. And welcome to video number 5 of the virtual stone carving apprenticeship. Wrapped up yesterday just working on these models that are cast. I've got to square this one up today it's quite a bit cooler, so it's nice to have the plaster work done before it cooled off. I'm very close with having this, ideally with the bas-relief work that we do, the highest details will be flush with the face of the die, exactly flush. And so I've cut this very close. I'm going to try to get this script so this is justified, which is one of the reasons I didn't do any rubber outside of the niche. I didn't try to do the original because the original was quite a bit deeper. So I'll work on squaring this up. This one's pretty well done. It's just about flat. It's a little tall over here. For what it is, it doesn't matter. I'm happy it came out as an oval because I don't really have many round shapes up here. And I'd like to have something different on the wall, make it stand out, people notice it a little bit more. Just fun to have something different. But it was a good way to show you how to resolve a completely failed mother, a mother with partial loss around the niche that still had rubber in terms of the mother failed. The niche was sound, but around the edge was broken. And then this one where there wasn't anything to capture, so I really didn't expect it to capture. So, but as you do models, you'll find you have some castings that work better and some that don't. Now, you know, I used a full bucket, basically about 2 gallons of plaster to do the mother on this Oklahoma. And it produced a really structurally sound, great, fantastic mother. And then I used about the same amount to cast the positive, and it came out great as well. So, we'll work on this. This is all just work to get done. It's a lot cooler out today. Been raining again, nothing like winter. It's just plain old winter weather, but it's not 30, 40 below in Vermont. So, but this whole video apprenticeship process series, I'm not trying to do anything fast. I'm not going to try to do anything that's like most videos that you go on YouTube and they blink, 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 blink 3 or 4 things and it's all done. And this is easy to do. You can do it fast. No, nothing with granite sculpture is fast or easy. It's all going to be slow. It's all going to take time. And I'm going to try to keep the videos from being too long because I don't like getting up into the 30-minute range. That's a lot to sit there and pay attention. But sometimes the continuity makes more sense than making it short and breaking it into 2 or 3 videos that seem like it's the same thing. I'm going to try to get the task done. We'll, as you go through and as you learn, it'll all start coming together. So study these, study the other videos, and I'll try to be real straightforward and real honest with you about what's involved so that you don't think that casted plaster is something you can do in 30 minutes before lunch. It ain't gonna happen. You gotta really plan some time for it. And the previous video, video number 4, that pretty much covered the bulk of an 8-hour day. And I was able to, you know, shrink it down into, you know, 30-ish minutes. But the plaster work was a full day. There was a lot to do, and with cleaning and prepping, and I still have more to clean up here. So I'm not going to sugarcoat any of this, pretend it doesn't take that long. It's a lot of work, and getting good at this takes a long time. You're not going to watch a few videos and miraculously start cutting good stone. So, but if you pay attention and you follow along and you do it the right way, you'll get a lot better at it. So hang in there, and we'll work on this and see how it goes. Now, if you watch the video on rasps and rifflers, I talked about how quality rasps are stitched so that their teeth don't form rows with peaks and valleys. They cover the whole surface. This little Caselli clay rasp is pretty good, but that's how it's stitched. The holes are punched in perfect lines. It was, I had to look, I couldn't find my little Sureform tool for sheetrock, drywall. It wasn't handy yesterday afternoon, and I just wanted to get it done. I knew where this was, so I grabbed it. This leaves all kinds of lines that then have to be scraped up. This Sureform is cut in a way that it doesn't have any peaks and valleys. This is made for leaving a smooth finish. And so it's a lot faster to use on this plaster to dress it down. And understanding those principles on your tools makes a big difference. It's one of the reasons I never reached for this, but we did a video a little while ago and I knew where it was and I just grabbed it because I wanted to get done for the day. So went and found the right tool and I'll have a lot better result. Now the weather, been talking about the weather, it's damp and rainy, which slows how quickly the plaster dries compared to it being hot. So the plaster isn't as brittle as it could be, and so it still cuts fairly well. If you wait till this dries completely, like especially in the summer when it's hot, boy, it's a lot slower process. When there's a little bit of moistness and all this will squeeze together, your plaster's still good. And because it's cold, because it's damp, that's what it's doing. So, but this is pretty close to flush. This tool right here, this straight edge, this old worn out saw, this is what I used to make the scrapers, and one of the clay tools is one of these blades, just a pull saw. I use the coarse blades after the fine ones dull up to help take off, waste off bulk really quick. But as a straight edge, I can estimate that these high points of these daffodils are almost exactly on the surface is what I want. So we worked these three sides pretty close, and now I'll tune this last side up. It's pretty humped right here. I'll level that out, and this should be a really nice piece. And with the Sureform being long, it's easier to get a nicer edge, a long straight edge, that you simply can't produce with a short tool. So. Okay, I'm just cleaning up the edges on these. This is a good example of telling you if you disrupt the silicone. You can see that that's not very flat, and that was flat on the model. It tends to not stay there good, and it doesn't index back in, and you may have some witness from your blocks, your register blocks. So, but this is what I'm concerned about. I don't care about the flats. But this gives you an idea on these other models. The perimeter around the daffodil cleaned up great. There's a couple of low spots here at the top, but this is just from the cardboard box. So that turned out great for a failed mother. The Dove turned out great for a failed mother. You got the anatomical. And then there's the Ecohomo on the end that just shows you, you know, if you put the effort into it and you want to put the extra plaster involved, it's real simple to make a really good one. But I'll just true up the edges on these a little bit, and then we'll gesso them up. This will just help square them up, make them look pretty. All right, these models are wrapped up. It's 4:30, 4:45, quitting time for the day. Going to gesso them tomorrow. May just gesso these with glue. I'm not sure where my jug of gesso is. I wanted to point out, you don't want plaster to dry anywhere where you don't want it to stay. In terms of tools, two of the most detrimental things to leave on tools is either flux for welding or brazing or plaster. And so I wash the Sureform and the rasp, just wash them and then dry them well. Heat them up a little bit. I put them in front of my big light bulb here because I don't have anything to heat with them. I didn't want to turn the heater on just to dry these tools off. Just warm them up till they're too hot to hold them, and they're going to be dry. You'll find out that you end up with some corrosion, especially all the sharp teeth will rust, oxidation, whatever, depending on the tools. But the plaster will rust them, but it'll also plug all the holes, and so you won't be able to get new plaster through there the next time you use it without getting it out, and these teeth can break off. So just clean your tools. You need to clean your tools anyways. Clean your scrapers. But I did all this with this pull saw, which I love it. One of the nice things about this, using it with plaster, is because there's no kerf on these teeth. You can clean it with a scraper and clean it really well. You can wash it, clean it, get it right. But that's all I use for tools. But tulips look great. The daffodils are meant to be viewed from this angle, just as the dove is meant to be viewed from here. The Ecohomo is meant to be viewed from here. Vantage point is really important with bas relief because your way you foreshorten and develop shape and form is all about producing value. And so where he may look kind of gaunt from the bottom, he's supposed to be, you know, at the verge of being crucified. So this is the vantage point that's always important. So let's grab the gesso and see if it's any warmer tomorrow. Okay, another day, got the gesso out. Gesso is typically used to seal canvas, and it's mainly white paint. It isn't anything special, just a white paint to seal up canvas. I like to use it on plaster to seal the plaster up. Because I've got a pretty basic studio. I don't have a climate controlled indoor whatever. But it it seals the surface. This is white gesso. You could use thin white paint or glue, and it'll do the same thing. But it seals the surface. It'll keep it from getting moldy, dirty. And it's also good because if you end up pointing these jobs, it gives you a nice surface to mark on, and then you just gesso over it instead of trying to erase them or clean it up if you do it more than once. Now, I did mention yesterday that little saw right there has no kerf, okay? Before somebody complains, yes, it has a kerf. It's a saw. The kerf is the thickness of the cut. It has no set on the blades. It has an extremely thin kerf. That's one of the reasons it's nice to use, is that it doesn't waste off material because the blade's being pulled. It doesn't have to be as strong in order to support itself like a typical saw that'd be pushed. And with no kerf, that means the teeth are not, with no set, that means the teeth are not oriented towards the left or the right in order to open up the cut. And so it doesn't clog like a normal wood saw, hand saw will clog. Sometimes people will use a little punch saw or sheetrock on plaster, and I don't like those as much because they tend to clog up and then they drag. That saw doesn't drag anywhere near as bad, and as soon as it starts to load up, it's real easy to just take your scraper and scrape everything off, scrape it clean, because the teeth have no set, so there's nothing to interfere with scraping it clean. So, doing these models, I find tremendous benefit because I develop the composition before I start carving the stone. Now I can look at the stone and just carve from either nothing or a really rough sketch. That's how my apprenticeship went with Gary. Gary just gave me a full size, which was a line drawing, and maybe we got a picture out of a Deprado or something like that and went up to the copy center up the street and made a Xerox, but back then it was still expensive to do that. So you generally just started carving. You didn't study anything. You just laid into it and went to it. And by doing it in clay, you get better economy with your stone. You use your stone a lot more efficiently. You also will rehearse the shape so you know what you're doing. But I like to take the work, especially for important jobs, and do it in clay, which obviously is a grayish, may have a little bit of a sheen, whatever, or an earth clay, which is an orange, and then cast it into plaster, which changes it to a white, to then carve it in the stone, because as you shift between mediums, colors, and the way the light's handled on the different material, you will understand the shape a lot better. And you can modify it to get a better result so that you actually get the high quality dark and light colors that you want during the actual carving. And if you carve just from the beginning, as you get better, you'll understand the differences of what shape produces what shadow or value, but especially as you're growing, that's just a way to speed it up. And it's good exercise to do this in general, but to convert it between two mediums before you ever touch the stone, you'll understand what you're doing a lot better. And so it's really worth the effort to model it, even if it's just a sketch. And granted, I didn't cast these before I started carving, but it's worth doing. I've got everything gessoed now. And see, that really makes it white. Of course, you could tint it if you want, but they all look pretty good. And then the tulips, and it really, this helps with the value as well, because it lightens the background, and so the shadows are more obvious. One thing with the silicone mold process, like I showed you, that I want to point out: if you're really careful when you apply the silicone, because all you do is you'll squirt on a bead and you'll dab it with a soapy wet finger to smooth it out. If you're very careful, you can make the surface perfectly smooth, and that has to do with how you advance the silicone along and don't have any gaps. If you're not as careful, you can have a lot of these little nibs and bumps, because those little things weren't on the clay. Those are defects in the mold, and if you're not careful with the mold, you can have a lot of them. It'll also almost make sort of a circular pattern, a scallop, or look like fish scales. So and there's a few spots on here where there's a little bit of inconsistency on the surface, but that's all from how the silicone is applied. If you're very careful, you can advance it and get a perfectly smooth mold. So it isn't foolproof, but it works pretty good. So we'll probably just about wrap this video up. I just got to clean this up, and then we'll hang them up on the walls so we can get to the next video and start talking about some other stuff, and clean this up and talk about stands and bankers and things like that to start equipping your studio, and move this big giant board here with the big angel on it to talk about tools and toolboxes, work boxes. So anyways, Thanks for coming in. My name's Clint Button here at Carolina Sculpture Studio on the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship, video number 5. See you soon.